What is up, everybody? Clint Lamb with Cover Crimson here to discuss another mailbag episode. Great questions. Last week wasn't able to get to some of those questions, so we're going to be addressing some of those today. Also have some questions for this week that we'll be adding in. Should be an interesting conversation. Alabama's got the Iron Bowl coming up. It's a must-win game for Alabama. Everybody knows it, but we'll start with some of these more team-wide type of questions that I got last week that I thought were interesting. And the first came from Garrett Gaskin, and he asked, "Hey, Clint, after watching the last three games, do you think Tai is trying too hard sometimes to make the most accurate, perfect throw instead of just letting it go and trusting his instincts? Kind of like a pitcher trying too hard to throw a perfect strike in baseball." Garrett, I think that is an excellent point. I've said similar. I think that is exactly that has been one of his biggest issues as far as especially throwing the vertical ball. Now, granted, you've also seen it on some of those digs coming across the middle of the field, but the vertical ball has probably been the most noticeable. It really has felt like that he has tried to aim things a little bit too much and hit the perfect ball, which is causing him to overthink it. It's such an instinctual position. Trust your mechanics and trust your ability. Let the football rip, and you've got playmakers who can get down the field and make catches. You're going to overthrow sometimes. You don't want to underthrow, obviously, because it's going to give the defensive back an opportunity to make a play. But, you're not always going to be perfect. But Tai Simpson, we know he has vertical ability. I've seen it, from the high school ranks. I've seen it as far as, in some of the games that he's played for Alabama. He can throw the football down the field. There's no problem with arm strength or anything like that. The accuracy and the touch on the vertical stuff might be spotty at times. It is not really a strength of his, I would say, but he is certainly better or more capable than we've seen up to this point in the season. And so you just got to trust it. And against Eastern Illinois, I don't think Alabama had any sort of desire to go out there and have Alabama or have Tai Simpson rip it all over the field and throw the football around and get his confidence up. I think they understand that is a weapon in the quiver, and they're kind of saving it for a much more important, much bigger game, which of course will be this weekend against Auburn. So not saying that they're going to go and throw a bunch of vertical shots and all of a sudden it's going to be one of the best deep ball offenses in college football, but I do think that they're a lot more effective in that area. And I do think that, or they can be a lot more effective in that area. And I think you'll start to see that maybe as soon as this weekend against Auburn, because if you can run the football even somewhat effectively against that defense, which won't be easy, but I also didn't think that they would be able to have any success against Oklahoma's defense or their run defense. And so if they can run the football, put Tai Simpson in some favorable situations, some second shorts, maybe some third and shorts, you can have a lot more success as far as throwing the football downfield off of play action. And then also even, if you're running the football effectively, even on first down, you can catch them off guard a little bit by going play action and things like that. So I definitely think that Tai has the ability, and I definitely think that you've got receivers who can win downfield. So would love to see them start to get the vertical passing game going as soon as this weekend. Appreciate the question, Garrett. Great question. Next question comes from Superfly, and he asked, if you had the choice of a permanent starting offensive line for Alabama to use for the rest of the season / playoff run, who would you start and why? There for a while, I was on board with this idea of, Caden Proctor at left tackle, Parker Brailsford at center. I liked the idea of Will Sanders at left guard just because I think from a schematic fit, he's a little bit better. You probably would have had some growing pains, but I think by the end of the season, maybe they could have been in a position where they could have had more success running the football and be able to run more of what they want to run with a guy like Will Sanders in the starting lineup. I've since kind of changed that because I think that they are starting to find some solutions on the right side, particularly moving Wilkin Formby to right guard. I think he performed really well against Oklahoma inside. Against Eastern Illinois this past weekend, they kicked him back out to right tackle, and they started Jaden Roberts at right guard. But really, a lot of your seniors or guys that was going to be their final home game, they were getting opportunities to get starts or significant playing time. And so I think it was more so that with Jaden Roberts. Now, I could be wrong on that because he had started or seen 100% of the snaps in the previous two games prior to Eastern Illinois, prior to Oklahoma. So it was a little bit surprising that he wasn't out there against the Sooners to start that game. But once you actually saw Wilkin Formby playing inside or playing next to Michael Carroll, you started to realize that it's probably a pretty good solution, and one that if Alabama can continue to get some continuity and some development there as far as those two guys playing next to each other, it might be a solution for the rest of the season, and it might be a solution for maybe even 2026. So Michael Carroll, to me, he's been like the one guy where it's like he's got to get a lot more consistent, make sure that he's not missing assignments or doing anything that's going to be detrimental to Tai Simpson or the rest of the offense. But as he's gotten more experience and maybe you're starting to see some of those mistakes be limited, I just think from a physicality standpoint, he's got the athleticism that you look for. He's one of those ultra competitive types of players where he's going to continuously get better because he's not going to let the competition get a leg up on him. Those are the kind of players that you want on the field. And, I was really excited that he finally started to get an opportunity to do that. But you also saw him playing next to Wilkin Formian. And I think from a communication standpoint, that was kind of a really, you got Parker Brailsford, who's a great communicator. Wilkin, one of the strengths that we've heard about him, good communicator. And he also understands what Michael Carroll is supposed to be doing at right tackle. Jaden Roberts, he's been a right guard pretty much his entire career, doesn't have little to no experience, and it's been several years since he's played any sort of tackle, even in practice. And so having a guy like Wilkin Formby out there who understands what Carroll's supposed to be doing, I think that helps Carroll. And, I don't think Wilkin has been a liability, or at least he wasn't against the Sooners when he was playing inside. So that was encouraging. I would probably stick with those four players: Proctor at left tackle, Parker Brailsford at center, Wilkin Formby at right guard. Maybe you end up going with a Jaden Roberts, but probably Wilkin Formby. And then, of course, Michael Carroll at right tackle. As far as left guard, I think Cam Dewberry is probably your best option there. I don't know from a stamina standpoint if that's been why they've continued to rotate. I don't know if they really like what, Gino Vandermark brings from an experience standpoint or a technical standpoint. He's technically sound, but he's not overly powerful. He's not a big, strong guy. He's not a great athlete. He's just one of those guys where he's very reliable from understanding what he's supposed to do. And from a technical side of things, he can be a pretty effective player. But I think amongst the offensive linemen who have been rotating in, he's probably the most limited overall. And so if they choose to stick with him and let him continue to rotate at left guard, it's not that I hate it. I think he is a pretty good player. I just think Cam Dewberry, while he's got some ups and downs, I also think he's a physical presence. He can kind of displace defensive linemen, move them off the football, and him working alongside Caden Proctor, I think, can be very advantageous as far as moving bodies off the line of scrimmage. But then also it can kind of compensate with his size and power playing next to Parker Brailsford, who's an undersized player who might not even be 100% this weekend against Auburn. So that's what I would go with. Obviously, the coaching staff, they may or may not agree, but that's how I would approach it at least. Appreciate the question, Superfly. Next one comes from Wrath of the Tusk, and he asked, so downward trend for the offense and special teams, new life at Auburn with Freeze gone. Give me 3 reasons to feel very optimistic about the Iron Bowl. This is a very interesting question because you're right. Auburn does have some new life, after the Hugh Freeze firing, especially offensively. Offense is why Hugh Freeze got fired in the first place. Defensively, they have been fantastic for most of the season. They've had some rough performances, particularly against Vanderbilt, but overall, they've been really good defensively. They're getting to play at home. It's offensively where I think Auburn has really struggled. They seemed to have found a new identity or new life as a result of really highlighting its playmakers like, Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, getting those guys tons of targets. I think that has really created an interesting dynamic for that offense, especially when you add in the QB run and the fact that Jeremiah Cobb's a pretty good running back. They got options. Their offensive line, good run blockers, not great in pass protection. And if there's one reason to start as far as feeling optimistic, I would probably start with the ability to, if you can get Auburn in some of those obvious passing situations, I think they have the ability or the talent to capitalize on those situations and really apply pressure on Ashton Daniels and or Deuce Knight. And with the way that this defense has been playing as far as being opportunistic and forcing turnovers, I think that you can force some against Auburn if you can put them in those unfavorable situations. It's a matter about winning the early downs, making sure that the quarterback run doesn't put too much strain on you. You don't want them to be able to turn, like they might not have a lot of success running the football with, in the traditional sense with the running back. But if they're able to compensate by using the quarterback's legs and, like I said, put them in favorable down and distances consistently, that's not what you want if you're Alabama. But if they can earn the opportunity to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback, I think they can get home against this Auburn offense. And I think that that could put them in some situations where maybe you force an errant throw that causes a turnover. Maybe you're able, it's a strip sack on the quarterback. I do think that maybe you could see some of that. So it's the pass rush going against Auburn's offensive line that's pretty good as run blockers, but have not been great in pass protection. That would be one area I would feel confident in. I'm starting to feel more confident in Alabama's run game. I know that it has really struggled really this entire season. They've had some moments, but it has been anything but consistent. You can't take away really anything from the Eastern Illinois game. You do like that they ran for close to 300 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think against that type of opponent, that's the type of production that you're looking for. But at the same time, you really can't take away a lot from that. But the Oklahoma game and their ability to run the football as well as they did against an Oklahoma defense that is one of the best in college football as far as stopping the run, that was really encouraging for me as well. And I think that if they can continue to build on that, is it Wilkin Formby being inside at right guard and him getting more comfortable? Is it getting Michael Carroll on the field for an entire game where he's getting more comfortable being one of those relied on players and can kind of get in the groove as a player a little bit more? Like, I don't know exactly what caused this. And it's not like they ran for a ton of yardage or had a ton of success against Oklahoma's defense. And outside of that 28-yard run from Daniel Hill, you saw zero explosives in the run game. But what you did see was pretty consistently being able to pick up yardage. And assuming that Daniel Hill is healthy, I do think that he can be a solution there who can consistently get yardage for you. I think Jam Miller, hopefully him getting further removed from his concussion, maybe he, starts to find that groove that he was in when he first came back from the collarbone injury. Against Georgia, I thought he was pretty good. Against Vanderbilt and Missouri, I think he was great. It wasn't until that concussion against Missouri that you really saw this fall off, and he really hasn't been the same player since. Now, that is concerning. I'll fully acknowledge that, but that also doesn't mean that he's going to continue to be in this, rut. Do I think there are times where he misses holes and misses opportunities and really doesn't press the line of scrimmage like he needs to? Absolutely. But I also think that he's playing a little bit timid in some ways. If he can kind of just find that pre-concussion form where he's a little bit more willing to kind of bang it in there, be physical, trust his eyes, trust what he's seeing, get north-south when the opportunity or the hole is available, I do think that you can maybe see him start to recapture some of that form. So I still think he can help Alabama's run game. And then A.K. Deere being a player who showed flashes against Eastern Illinois, I'm not saying they're going to give him any sort of significant volume. I don't even know if he's going to be in the rotation in a game that, many would consider to be in doubt going into Jordan-Hare Stadium. But I do think that as from a vision standpoint, when those opportunities are there where the hole or creases have been made by the offensive line or the tight ends, you need to have running backs that can see it consistently. That's kind of been an issue at times for a lot of the other running backs. I think A.K. Deere is a little bit better on that front. If he can get some opportunities, maybe you can get, a couple of good gains, from him. So I'm actually starting to feel a little bit better about Alabama's run game. They have actually played their best from a run blocking standpoint or a run production standpoint against the premium competition. It's been strange, but against Georgia, they look pretty good. Vanderbilt and Missouri both have top 25 run defenses. Oklahoma has the number 3 run defense. And Alabama, I think in those 4 games, they've actually been pretty decent running the football. It's been against Tennessee and South Carolina and LSU, who all have respectable run defenses, but they're in the 40 to 50. I think LSU is number 31, but the other 2 are in the 40 range. So, I don't know what has really caused that, but I do think against a, borderline top 10 run defense in Auburn, Alabama will be able to have a little bit more success than people are thinking. That's something that Jimmy originally brought up. And as I started thinking about it, I think it was a great point. And so if they can do that, I feel pretty encouraged about their ability to play off of that and have success in the passing game as well. So Bama Boy, he asked, when will we see changes at the running back spot? I just addressed that a little bit, so I won't spend too much time on it. I forgot that was a question. To be honest with you, it was a good question because a lot of people have been wondering, what you're doing is you're seeing Jim out there, and he's not really a solution. You see Daniel Hill, and he's doing some good things, but I mean, is he a solution? Did he fix the run game? No. You see Kevin Riley, he's had some good moments, but I'm telling you, I mean, when you look at his actual production, and I'll go ahead and bring it up because it's something that I think people don't realize, because been seeing a lot of people say they want to see Kevin Riley more, but when you look at actual SEC play and what he's actually been doing. So Jim Miller this year, 97 carries for 348 yards. He's averaging 49.7 yards per game, 3.6 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. Not great, but he's also had some pretty good performances. He's just fallen off as of late. Daniel Hill, 38 carries for 141 yards, 3.7 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns in SEC play. He's really started to come on strong as of late, especially it's got like a hammer near the goal line. If you can get it, within 4 yards, you can trust Daniel Hill more times than not to be able to get a touchdown out of that. That's certainly beneficial, and why I think he's slowly emerging is he Alabama's lead back? Maybe not. But if you're looking to hand any one of these guys volume, I think Daniel Hill would probably be the best bet. You're not going to get those explosive runs. I know that this coaching staff really wants explosives both through the air and on the ground, but just being able to get any sort of consistent production and avoid the negative yardage runs, which is something that Alabama has done extremely well the last 2 games, that's also something that I think Daniel Hill helps with. But Kevin Riley in SEC play, he's had 25 carries for 66 yards, averaging 2.6 yards per carry. So 3.6 for Jam Miller, 3.7 for Daniel Hill. Kevin Riley sitting down there at 2.6. That's pretty substantial, pretty significant difference. And so that's why when a lot of other people are saying, hey, you need to start leaning or relying a little bit more on Kevin Riley, I do think he brings some explosiveness. And if the holes are there, if the offensive line starts to improve, if Wilkin Formby is a solution at right guard and Michael Carroll being a full-time player at right tackle, that's a solution. And Cam Dewberry's getting more comfortable in his environment, and hopefully Parker Brailsford's healthy. Like, if you start seeing the offensive line sustaining blocks a little bit better, which I think that they did to an extent against Oklahoma, then, a guy like Kevin Riley who will take what is there and he can turn it into an explosive play, that's probably where you want to start to lean. But as long as the running backs have to be creative, they have to be able to see it. I think Riley kind of struggles with that somewhat right now. So I would be a little bit reluctant to say you need to turn to Kevin Riley, even though I do think that he'll continue to get opportunities. And if he shows that, he can be that player, then you might end up seeing that. You might end up seeing that be a bigger part, or him be a bigger part of Alabama's rotation. So that's going to do it for today's mailbag. A lot of offensive questions. Also, covering a little bit with the Iron Bowl, but Kyle Rush, who is with the Barn, our Auburn YouTube channel, site, whatever you want to call it, him and I are going to be jumping on a show together and talking the Iron Bowl. We're going to be having questions for each other. It should be great conversation. Very much looking forward to it. And we appreciate all you guys for hopping on here with us, or hopping on here with me to discuss some of these things. Get on over to rowback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order. We appreciate them so much. They have been fantastic. I love everything that I've gotten from those guys, and I know that you guys will too. And people have hit me up and kind of asked about size and what they should look for. I'm a bigger guy. I got XL. Some XL stuff that I get, it doesn't fit correctly. It's too small. This stuff fits perfect. So I think it's pretty spot on as far as those hoodies, which are by far my favorite. I love everything that they're doing over there at Rowback, and we certainly appreciate the relationship that we have with those guys. Take care of your family. It's the holidays. Get on over to rowback.com and use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order. And also for the podcast, you guys have been crushing it for us, as far as getting us, going over there and downloading. We appreciate everybody who has done that. If you haven't, understand that you can help us tremendously. We're trying to grow that side of things. That's a very important element of what we're trying to build, and as far as the Cover Crimson brand. And so if you guys would, wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever, head on over there, search the Cover Crimson Podcast Network. That podcast network part is extremely important. Make sure you hit the download button or follow or whatever it is, and kind of get into the rotation with us. You don't have to do anything at that point. The downloads are automatic, and like I said, if you want to listen to it over there, fantastic. I'm going to be doing another mailbag, a second mailbag, I think on Friday, and there's a lot of other great questions that we're going to be addressing, but that's only going to be in podcast form. So if you want to check that out, if you like today's show or episode, you want to hear some more mailbag questions and get my thoughts on it, get on over there and download wherever you listen to your podcast, and you'll be able to get that second episode. Once again, we appreciate you guys so much, and we will talk to you guys soon.